June 1991. So at this point in my life, I'm finished with Bowling Green back in Elyria, Ohio. Got a temp job working at a nursery, taking care of plants. And spoilers, didn't make enough money to go back to Bowling Green. So when I say I'm done with Bowling Green, I was done with Bowling Green. Thanks to the GI Bill not being what I expected it to be. Anyway, so summertime, working in a nursery, dating one of my coworkers, and for a short time, because she said only stupid people read. So, we weren't really compatible. But anyway, I did some reading anyway. And these are the books that I read in June of 1991. A lot of them by the same author, but it's not one that we've had before. So let's get into it. And we're going to start with, there's basically like three authors. One of them that we've seen before. We're starting with The Sword of Samurai Cat by Mark E. Rodgers, written and illustrated by Mark E. Rodgers. This is a collection of short stories. So I'm just going to, right off the back of here, we've got Red Dawn of the Dead. So Samurai Cat, Tamakoto, and his little kitten companion Shiro are fighting commies in a mall. There you go. The Dead Lot, where Tamakato and Shiro are taking on a bunch of Stephen King's type horrors. Then we have Samurai Cat on the Temple of Dog Doom. Obviously, a parody of Indiana Jones stuff. The Invasion of the Kitty Snatchers. I think you see where this is going. So it's a body snatch kind of thing. And then Heart of Darkness. Tomakato and Shiro go to Hollywood, take on Tinseltown. I think these books are hilarious. This book in particular is hilarious. The one thing that I remembered most from this is in The Dead Lot, the Stephen King one, Cthulhu shows up and basically rags on modern horror. And he's like, really? A haunted car, a rabid dog? We are cosmic terrors. We are what horrified people in the past. Now you're afraid of these silly things. And I thought it was funny. And I think Cthulhu shows up, keeps popping up in the different stories. Not 100% sure. This is one I'm going to have to reread. I have 4 out of 5 of these books. And they're hilarious. And beautiful illustrations. And you see that cover, obviously, and there's the back, but it's full of illustrations. If you're familiar with Frank Frazetta's The Death Dealer, there you go. But that's just a couple samples of the wonderful illustrations, hilarious stories. And this is a newer edition. The one that I don't have, this has a 2002 copyright on it. But the one that I don't have, I've only seen used on Amazon. I will pick it up someday, trying to find a nicer copy than what seems to be available. But anyway, that's book number 1. The Sword of Samurai Cat. Great stuff. Book number 2 is Bulletproof by Max Allan Collins. So this is the first time I've read Max Allan Collins. I discovered him because I was a fan of the Dick Tracy movie that came out in 1990, starring Warren Beatty, Madonna, a ton of other people. And I discovered that Max Allan Collins was writing Dick Tracy, the comic strip. He had taken over from Chester Gould. and he's written a ton of other stuff, comic books and mysteries, has a ton of different series. So, I do believe this is the first one that I read by him, and everything else being equal, I'm going to say this wasn't the first that I found by him. Possibly the reason I read it is because this is about Elliot Ness of the Untouchables, but his time in Cleveland, Ohio. So I'm like, yeah, hometown-ish. I don't think I'm even considered a suburb. Some people can't decide how far out a suburb is. I don't think Elyria is a suburb of Cleveland, but anyway, it's like 25 minutes away. So Bulletproof. This is about Elliot Ness in Cleveland fighting crooked labor leaders. So basically the mob, racketeers, running the unions. And he's taking them on. So this is fictionalized history. So a lot of the stuff is factual, but Max Allan Collins adds, I don't want to say drama, personal stuff. I don't know. It reads like a novel. It's not a history book. And what Max Allan Collins does, as far as I can tell, is he'll research these things, and we're going to come up on something else. And if there are any unanswered questions, he basically puts in, I believe, what he thinks is the most realistic or logical answer to those questions. We'll get to that a little later in this list. But anyway, so Bulletproof, Max Allan Collins, about Elliot Ness in Cleveland, fighting racketeers. Good stuff. Next up, book number 3, Dick Tracy by Max Allan Collins. And this is simply a novelization of the movie. I've seen the movie multiple times. It's been a long-ass time since I've seen it. But I wanted to read the novelization. I think I might get back into that a little bit. There's a lot of horror novelizations out there I'm going to pick up. But anyway, so this is just, as I said, it's a novelization of the movie by the guy that knows the character second best to the creator, I would say. Book number 3, that's a 3. That's not 3, that's 3, is Dick Tracy, The Secret Files. And this is edited by Max Allan Collins and Martin H. Greenberg. There's a theme here. This is a short story collection along the lines of The Further Adventures of Batman, Further Adventures of Superman, etc. You've seen one or two of those in these videos before. This is essentially the same thing. Bunch of Dick Tracy short stories, but they do range from, I'm just looking at the back here, 1941 to today, being 1991. And 16 stories, a lot of great authors. Of course, Max Allan Collins, Mike Resnick, Ed Gorman, Barbara Collins, John Lutz. But the one that stands out the most to me, and another reason for me to reread this book, there's a story, a Dick Tracy story in here by F. Paul Wilson. Yes. I wonder if it falls into the secret history. It doesn't. It's not on the list. But there you go. Dick Tracy short stories. Cool stuff. Next up, we have Dick Tracy Goes to War by Max Allan Collins. This is just a Dick Tracy, original Dick Tracy novel. Takes place in 1942. Dick Tracy wants to join the Navy to help in the war effort, but he's convinced to stay home, fight spies and things. And there's crazy villains, as there always are in Dick Tracy. And Dick Tracy Jr., Tess Trueheart, all the Dick Tracy characters. It's good stuff. And this is what happens when a movie like this comes out. Excuse me. Especially if it's successful, then you're going to get other media things. There was a lot of Dick Tracy stuff out at the time. Next up, the one author that's not actually new to this list, The Voice of Night by Dean R. Koontz. And this is about Roy and Colin. Two kids, high school, I believe. Roy is super popular, Colin not so much, but for some reason Roy wants to be his friend. And then it turns out Roy's a sociopath. Tells Colin that he has killed people. He wants Colin's help to kill people. Colin's hesitant. Roy tries to kill Colin. Craziness ensues. Don't remember much about it. Had to look it up. But it's Dean Koontz at this time, so probably okay. Then we have Samurai Cat in the Real World by Mark E. Rodgers. Obviously, since I'm not showing you anything, this is the one I don't have. And in this one, Samurai Cat, since he's in the real world, takes on Al Capone in Chicago, then takes on Nazis in World War II, then takes on Stalinists in the USSR. But real world is used really loosely because there are Nazi dinosaurs in this book. But again, great illustrations, hilarious stories, fun stuff. And then finally, we have Butcher's Dozen by Max Allan Collins. This is another Eliot Ness in Cleveland book, and this is my favorite of the Eliot Ness in Cleveland books because it deals with the torso killer, also known as the Mad Butcher of Kingsbury Run, who was a serial killer that was in Cleveland and was never caught. There were a lot of theories. Some people thought maybe the same person, or the Mad Butcher was the same person who killed Black Dahlia. They thought maybe they could attribute a bunch of killings because of train routes, and so anybody killed along these train routes could possibly be a victim. And Eliot Ness was safety director in Cleveland, I believe is the proper title. And so he was investigating. If I remember correctly, there was a point where he ran for mayor of Cleveland and he lost. And I believe people attribute it to his inability to catch the torso killer. I could have that wrong. It's been a long time since I've read about this stuff. But really interesting book. And as I was saying earlier, so Max Allan Collins, I believe, picks what he thinks is the most logical solution, for lack of a better way to put it. So he doesn't, because the Mad Butcher was never caught, he's not caught in this book, but it essentially is telling us who it is. I won't tell you, because I think you should read this book, but not that it's like anyone famous. You wouldn't recognize the name, but I'm not going to tell you what the, solution is. But it is, yeah, so there's, even though they're not caught, there is this ending where, yeah, we, the reader, and I think maybe Eliot Ness, I can't remember, pretty sure that it was a certain person. They just couldn't bring them to justice, I guess is the best way to put it. Anyway, really, really cool book. I wish I had these Eliot Ness books. I may, sometime when I have the time and money, hunt them down. But not books I see pop up at like half-price books, or I'd be snatching them up. Anyway, that's it. That's all I read in June. So basically we had a bunch of Max Allan Collins, 2 by Mark E. Rodgers, and 1 Dean Koontz. And I guess you could say 16 other authors because of the short story collection. But Max Allan Collins has a story in there, so 15 other authors. Anyway, there you go. That's what I read. June 1991. My question for this video is, well, let me start with this. Of course, Dick Tracy was a newspaper comic strip. I believe that's where it started. There have been I think there were serial movies. Not 100% sure. Of course, the Warren Beatty movie, radio shows. I used to have a bunch of the radio shows on cassette, and they were awesome because they included the ads and the special stuff at the end, like the Dick Tracy Jr. Junior Detectives Club or whatever it was called. And it was one of those things where you literally could send away for a decoder watch or ring, and then there would be coded messages at the end of the show that you could decode. I don't know if they ever said, drink your Ovaltine, because I didn't have one of the rings. But I loved listening to those old shows, especially for the old ads. Was it puffed rice and puffed wheat, something? And they talked about it's puffed by being shot out of a cannon. There were ads for coal to heat your house, things like that. If they weren't for Dick Tracy, they were in the shadow ones that I had too, but loved listening to those old ads. They're great. So anyway, but Dick Tracy started as a comic strip in the newspaper. So my question for this video is, what is your favorite newspaper comic strip? Comedy, drama, soap opera-y, single panel, multiple panel, doesn't matter. Your favorite newspaper comic strip. I loved the funny stuff. I loved, of course, things like Dick Tracy, The Phantom, Spider-Man, because I'm a geek. But I would say my all-time favorite would have to be, not doesn't have to be, but it is, at least it's what I'm choosing now, would be Bizarro by Dan Peraro. Pereiro, however you say his name. If you're not familiar with that, it was a one-panel strip. Basically, it was like a sophisticated version of The Far Side. I think the art was more sophisticated. I think the humor was more sophisticated. Not putting down The Far Side. I enjoyed The Far Side. But I loved Bizarro. It was introduced to me when a friend of mine in California, back in the 80s, got me a Bizarro calendar. And then I started reading the strip in the paper, started buying all the books that collected the strips, and I actually met Dan Peraro. I actually held the door open for him at a Borders bookstore because I happened to be walking in. There was a guy with a bunch of boxes of books behind me, so I held the door open for him because I have manners occasionally. And it turned out to be Dan Peraro. So I bought his newest book and had him sign it for me, and he did a little sketch in it. And then he actually wrote a book about that book tour because he had a new book out. The publisher would not pay for a book tour, so he reached out and to his fans, and essentially just random people in the cities he was going to would pick him up from the airport, and then someone would give him a place to stay, and then someone would take him to the bookstore. And it wasn't always necessarily the same people. So like person A might pick him up from the airport and take him to person B's house where he was going to stay, and then person C might take him to the bookstore and then take him back to person B's house. So he wrote all about that, traveling around the country, meeting all sorts of people, and some personal stuff that went on. But I met him while he was on that tour that ended up in the book. Unfortunately, some cities got chapters. Cleveland got one sentence. And I stopped in at a Borders in Cleveland, and technically it was in Westlake. But anyway, so that's a lot of rambling for me to say that Bizarro is what I'm picking as my favorite newspaper comic strip. I think it's hilarious. He's still doing it. He has an assistant now. And it's still very, very funny. So what's yours? What do you like? Are you a Marmaduke fan? Dilbert? Mary Worth? Family Circus? Or do you not read them at all? I still occasionally will look at the Sunday funnies. Just to see. Some are still funny, some not so much, in my opinion. But anyway, there you go. That's all I've got for you this time. If you have any comments, or questions, or corrections, put them in the comments below. Comments are open for spoilers. Just post a spoiler warning. We try to be polite here on my channel. Please like, share, and subscribe. And if you'd care to follow me on other social media, my Twitter is @Ronin5757. My Instagram, where I post pictures of books, comic books, board games, and fuzzy animals, is Eric Smith 5757. That's Eric with a K, ERIKSMITH 5757. That's all I've got for you this time. So until next time, read more books.